They said the worst thing. Yeah, it is. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Sisters on water and something. And they say don't have a black ant because you can't see them. Yeah, there you go. We ready to roll? Missing a few people. Hello, Steve, way over there.
Something to sit on over there.
Good. Okay, good evening, everyone. We're missing a few people. Hopefully somebody will come rolling in here in a little while. May we have roll call?
Madam Chair.
Here. Mhm.
Like Commissioner Hensick is not with us. Chair Stevens.
I'm here.
And just in case you wonder why I always voice that aloud, it makes it easier when I'm taking minutes later. Commissioner Slaughter is not with us. Vice Chair Bacher. Commissioner Porternet. Here. Commissioner Bertolo is not with us. Alternate Boyles is not with us. Alternate Larson.
Here.
Is on from the Planning and Zoning Commission, Helfrey is with us. Council Member Liaison Marshall.
Present.
Council Member Liaison with HPC Advisor Scott. Wildwood Historical Society Liaison King.
Sir.
And our two youth members are sadly not with us this evening. But we do have quorum. Madam Chair, if you will promote our alternate to voting member.
Steve, you get to vote tonight. Thank you.
You still have to sit way over there, but vote.
You have to vote a certain way.
Still leaning too far, right? Okay, opening remarks. I'm glad to be here tonight and glad to be with all of you. Sorry I missed the site visit last week, so we're anxious to hear all about that a little bit later. I would like to announce that Angie has been promoted to full commissioner. She's not here tonight, but she is now a full commissioner. And Elizabeth Broyles will be back with us as alternate commissioner instead of a liaison, which she was before. So it'll be good to see her face back here soon. So can we stand now as we're able? And Alan, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Certainly.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. We have the minutes of the January 23rd meeting. Has anyone found anything that's not quite right or anything that is missing? Hearing no complaints about them. We thank Robin very much for her work. They are approved by general consent. Public comment? Nobody signed any paper. Linda, news and updates from the Wildwood Historical Society.
Madam Chair, just to make sure, we do have one participant online.
Okay.
If they would like to speak at this time, please use the raise hand feature. But thank you for.
Okay, thank you. Linda.
Okay, well, at least we're back in business again. Our next meeting will be March 19th, and our speakers are going to be Matt and Tom Kelp. They're going to give us a history of like kelp excavating, plus the kelp family, which has been in Wildwood forever. That, and if anybody knows painters, we need to have the exterior of the Henkin House painted. So if anybody knows a company or something that will do exterior painting on historic homes, let us know.
Is it always white?
Mhm. Well, who knows what it was underneath the siding that's on there. But from all of the pictures we've seen, which really only go, most of them go back to like the 30s or so, it looks like it was always white.
I asked.
Yeah, yeah.
It doesn't seem to live up to its name. Whitehaven.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Madam Chair, if
Yes.
I may, when Hinman's a wonderful resource at the county, I can reach out to her. And she just recently asked me who our contractors were for historic markers. And so I gave her that information. So she'll just send it out to the network.
Okay.
Good. Okay, so we're ready for old business. The Essen log cabin update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of the commission, the Department of Planning has prepared for your consideration tonight a memorandum relating to the bidding process associated with the reassembly of the Essen log cabin. First of all, I'd like to extend my appreciation to Mr. Scott, Ms. Stevens, and several others for their efforts in this regard, including Ms. Keefe, because obviously it was a process to get all of the components together from our architectural team, as well as our village green team and others. So I do want to thank you all for helping get that along the way and ultimately to a bid process. The bid process concluded at the end of January. We received 4 bids. Those bids are summarized in the table that's provided as part of the memorandum. One bid was $144,000, which obviously is well below what we had anticipated in terms of the cost of the project. But it also sends up a red flag in that our architect of record, Carol Quigley, and others that we have discussed this reassembly with over the years has always said it's going to be more than you think. So $144,000 was much less than we had thought. On the opposite end, high bid was almost $500,000, $500,000, and that surprised us as well. There were 2 bidders that were relatively close to each other, within $5,000. That was Bombshell Construction. Bombshell Construction is the general contractor for Village Green Phase 1, the company that's doing the work just west of City Hall. The other was Charette, and they seem to have the largest portfolio of experience, and they were $5,000 more than Bombshell. The department took the bid results to the Planning and Parks Committee of City Council, and you may wonder why. Not first you all. Well, quite simply, given the bidding results, the department first and foremost thought, based upon a quick review of references and past projects, that we needed to eliminate the low bid, which is always a difficult process. And we'll close the loop with KV Contracting of Waterloo, Illinois. But ultimately, we wanted to negotiate with 2 middle bidders and see if we can find a solution to first being about $100,000 more than we have budgeted for the project, and also to determine who would be the best contractor for our project. The Planning and Parks Committee endorsed several steps. Those steps, again, are identified in the memorandum. And we are authorized to bypass the low bid if we feel appropriate and at least make that recommendation to you as the Historic Preservation Commission to also negotiate with the two middle bidders, that being Bombshell Construction and Charette Creek. And then ultimately authorize the department to look at the 2025 capital improvements program and maybe shift some funds around that have been allocated for other projects that may not be as priority as this. So tonight, we do not have a recommendation. Ms. Keith's been very patient with the Director of Planning because we'd like to get in and start those conversations as soon as possible. It just hasn't been a good couple of weeks for that to occur. But we are working in that direction, and I did provide Representative Charette Creek an acknowledgement that we'll do our best to kind of make that contact next week. So hopefully, in a very short period of time, we'll have a solution to our problem. We'll be able to present you a recommendation for a contractor for the reassembly of Essen Log Cabin. And again, I'd just like to conclude with my appreciation for all of you and your participation in the development of the bid documents, the guidance you provided as we discussed many components of those bid documents, and ultimately now your patience as we work through what has been a difficult bidding environment for all of us here at City Hall. So thank you. And if there are any questions, Ms. Keefe and I would be glad to try to answer them.
Steve?
Yes, Mr. Scott, he was at the second pre-bid meeting. And he had quite the portfolio of historic building, having worked in Herman. Yep.
For the three. But I do think that good understanding was necessary. Necessary.
One of the advantages of Bombshell Construction, and I've had a quick conversation on this particular matter with one of their representatives, is just from a mobilization standpoint, they're there. So any cost associated with that, we would hope be able to be deducted from the bid, and we can start there in terms of reductions and maybe get as close as we can to what we have budgeted, and or at least be able to shift funds so we can get as close as possible to a project.
Yeah, I would think that they would probably have some wiggle room. A lot of times we have a construction company and have been doing construction for over 40 years, my husband and I. And sometimes these bids, they just like throw a number out there and try to be high just in case there's problems. But they probably do have a lot of wiggle room. Yeah.
We're counting on that, and part of it too is just, again, from Bombshell's perspective, Bombshell Construction, they've made it clear they've not done a reassembly. They're enthusiastic about it. They talk about the project every time we meet on Village Green Phase 1. But hopefully, like you say, they were cautious in their bid, and as they get more information and understand the project dynamics and the possibility of being a contractor for it, we can find some savings.
I had an additional question too. Just curious with the two middle bids, what's kind of the main component of those bills? Is it labor? Is it professional consulting fees? What's the real driver on those?
Well, for the most part here, from the perspective, since the disassembly of the Essen Log Cabin was done without the care and process that it needed, we're having to build the foundation. We're having to build the truss and roof structures. And for the most part, I think that's the additional cost. And there is, again, some missing logs that have to be addressed. And that requires an experience level that hopefully whatever bidder we choose has. We're confident that we'll get a good product once we're done, whatever bidder we end up choosing.
Good. Thank you.
And the law. Sorry. rafters. That would have to be. But that would be the, how long. Leadership.
But as far as the floor joists and whatnot, things that are hidden don't have to be historically correct. Is that true?
Yes, we're camouflaging the new slab on grade. The fact that we're using stone that we've salvaged from other demolitions. We're using the cedar shake roofs, which is consistent with what we think was on there originally. And again, in the interior, obviously we're focused on making the exterior as appropriate and as consistent as possible. But obviously there'll be some latitude in the interior because we've talked about smoke detectors and other things we just have to do. Yeah, that big widescreen TV. Well, again, we appreciate your patience. It was a crucial and integral step to get the process started, the bidding. It isn't what we had hoped, but don't be deterred. We'll figure out a solution. And Dr. Rambo and Mr. Marshall have been very supportive when we've talked about this at the committee meeting levels and as well as city council. So I look forward to a successful project. It's just going to take us maybe a month or two longer. Thank you all.
Anyone else?
Well, our chair wanted to end on a light note with this cabin. So without further ado.
I know we always have to worry about those building codes. So, thank you. I happened to see that on Facebook this week and I just couldn't pass up. Hey, so moving on from the log cabin to our historic preservation plan. Bet that's Robin.
Madam Chair, members of this commission, we have been having conversations with our selected consultant. If you may recall, at your last meeting, this commission voted to advance MIG as our preferred consultant for the historic preservation plan. So the department did reach out to MIG and we requested a scope and cost of services, which has been provided for you in your agenda packets this evening. And I thought I would go over their base proposal with you, just so everyone's familiar with what they're proposing. So phase one would be their project kickoff. That's where they would do the background research and review associated with the plan, and a result of that would be an existing conditions report. So that should give us a good sense of, you know, where things stand for historic preservation in Wildwood, what's out there, what we've done, you know, because we can't really plan for the future until we kind of take stock of where we are presently. Phase two for MIG is draft one of the plan. This would be 30% complete. This is where they would do a lot of upfront engagement. They would have we're recommending 2 consultants on site for an open house. They would attend an HPC meeting. They would hold focus groups with various groups in the community and go on a driving tour of Wildwood's historic resources. So for that stage, we would have Marsha Boyles here, who was our project manager for that team. And we'd also have Lori Matthews, who is the historic preservationist and can provide that technical expertise. For phase three, this is where they would get to a 70% complete plan formatted in the form of a PDF. This would also include some engagement that would take place in late summer, early fall. I think they would have another on-site visit with us. We would do a pop-up event with them present, a midpoint meeting with this commission. additional focus groups and time with any partners that we've developed throughout the planning effort, such as the Wildwood Historical Society. Phase 4 is the final draft of the plan. This is where they would plan to present the full document to a virtual open house so that everyone had the opportunity to view the whole thing and make comment before taking it to the adoption hearings. Phase 5 is plan adoption. So that's where we would take it to the appropriate adoption hearings and they would provide the PowerPoint for that. Phase 6 is the final plan. So that's where we would make those final edits. And then finally, phase 7 is more of an ongoing, but they would plan to have bi-weekly meetings with staff throughout the duration of the project to make sure that everything is going smoothly on track and everybody's in the loop of what's happening. So that's generally the scope of work that they've proposed. They also added a number of menu items for us to choose from. So that base proposal would add up to $34,928, which is exactly on budget for us. However, this department is advocating that we add some additional items onto the base proposal. The base proposal actually only allotted one MIG staff person for that initial on-site visit. So that would include the open house, the driving tour, the focus groups, et cetera. We felt it was very important that we had our historic preservationist on site for at least one of these visits. And so we felt that that second MIG staff person was an important addition to our scope of work. So we are advocating that additional cost. For that second trip, that was actually more of an optional task. So it's either eliminate the second trip or we pay an additional cost to have that second trip. And that would include more pop-up events, the HBC meeting and the focus groups. We are advocating for that as well. Because without fail, the first meeting will likely exclude some parties. Also, if we want to really zero in on our youth engagement, that second trip would happen more in that early fall period, and that would allow us to engage the youth. So there's many reasons that we feel that second trip would be useful to the planning effort. They did recommend an online survey as part of the engagement. The department feels that is something that we can take on as far as that survey work. So we're not recommending that additional cost. And then they also added costs pertaining to having a web page devoted to the plan effort. To keep everyone engaged and in the loop of what's going on. And we also felt that the department can take on that component as well. So finally, our last recommended additional cost to the scope would be a plan marketing brochure. This came up many times when we were crafting our RFQ as a commission. Everyone felt like there needed to be some sort of public-friendly component to the plan so that we could so that anyone could pick it up and be engaged by it and find it useful. And so we did feel like this plan marketing brochure was an important component as well. So with those three costs, that does add an additional $9,540, which would take us, if we exclude our grant amount, it would take us to $23,468. As a city cost. I can potentially reach out to SHPO at this stage and see if they would have any additional funds to help us out with the planning effort. So potentially I could take that down a little bit. But we are advocating for an additional about $9,500 to that base cost. Now we do have something highlighted in green, and this is where we're a little bit on the fence. MIG is also recommending as an additional task the development of historic contexts. They describe these historic context statements as useful for the development of National Register nominations and survey work and things of a more technical nature where everything revolves around those historic context statements. We did look at potentially doing a historic context for the city a year ago or so when we were looking at the Route 66 grants. At that time, it was noted that a historic context costs almost as much as this planning effort, like around $35,000 to $40,000. So in that respect, $4,000 doesn't seem like a whole lot to have language that you can copy and paste and then put in these applications. However, at the same time, it's a significant cost to the total cost. And so it's really, we're going to ask for your feedback and just let you know that the department could go either way on this one. But we are recommending some additional components to the scope, and we are looking for your endorsement this evening and feedback.
Okay. Questions or comments right now? Ed?
I guess my question would be around that second trip with two people. I do consulting all day long on Zoom all over the world. The days of thinking to have two people come back, I get it the first time, but to have two people to come back to see how big of groups we would have, would there not be a venue that we could do more from a Zoom or Teams or something like that to try to get some groups where that second person may or may not even be on that call, but just an option. It just seems that that's a lot of money for a second person to come back for. And again, I don't have all the details as far as the pop-up or the HPC meetings or whatever. It's just a thought.
I'd just like to clarify, for that second trip, it would be one person. So if we don't have the one person come, then there's no second trip.
And that's the only venue you were going to have for the pop-up events and that meeting and a focus groups. So that all of that drives around having a second person here to do that.
Yes, just to make sure you understand, but it would be one person from MIG.
I get it now, yeah.
Okay, on site, yes. And it's certainly, potentially exploring a virtual way of doing that is an option. This was an optional task. So if this commission would like to go that route, that's certainly doable, and we can certainly figure out how we might orchestrate that.
And you said item 1.2, that would be something that you think you could forego and the city could just, make up the difference on your own without having to have that expense.
Well, you said 1.2.
Right there, the first one.
The city wouldn't develop that. So I just want to clarify that we would not develop new historic context statements. We would just forego having that as a part of the plan.
Okay, yeah.
Steve?
Yeah, I think, I think it's important to have an historical concept plan, because especially if you're looking at getting neighborhoods designated as historical areas, because I don't think you're going to have much luck in getting individual buildings designated on the National Register. But I do think that some of the neighborhoods are like the old Route 66 corridor or Orville, downtown Orville, could be on the National Register. And you would need the context survey for that, I believe. So that's what I think it would be very good to have.
It's with the historic context, I almost wonder if that might be a good negotiation with SHPO, because they were, that's something that they fund. So I could, upon direction of this commission, I could just reach out to Mr. Dial and see if that's a possibility as well.
Yeah. It's almost a little separate side thing from this, but I think it's important, and if they want it, that'd be nice.
No?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
In terms of the context statement, as Robin mentioned, and she did a very good job of it, we kind of debated back and forth. I represented as almost 10% of the overall cost for the historic preservation plan, which seems a little high to me. Robin and I also asked for some clarification, understanding what historical context means in this particular task. We got a response. I don't know if we felt it was everything we wanted. And I would offer that if it is something you want to consider, as Mr. Scott just mentioned, it made me think of it. It seems like it's almost a tangential component. Maybe it's something we can come back to in 2026. And that way keep our costs down on the preservation plan. Because as you know, as we get into the plan, there may be things we want to do. And I'd like to have a little bit of, let's say, spare tire in the trunk so that if we needed additional funds, we got them. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, Rob.
Maybe a motion.
Yes.
I think it makes good sense. Try to separate these, and it gives Robin a chance and perhaps more time to work on the grant for the 4320 associated with that thing, and we can move forward with the rest, and we have motion to separate the two and give Robin the authority to negotiate you guys know what I'm either restated or.
So you're saying to give us the authority to go forward with those 3 orange highlighted items?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, and separate the development of a new or context statement, because I don't know. I'm ignorant of that whole process. And I don't know what a historic context statement actually means. But beyond that, I think it's important that we move forward on this. We've got the inertia and we need to do it. But I think, as Steve said, we need this thing to be separated. So so my motion would be to approve the rest of your proposed increased expenditures. You seem to feel you could get a few bucks maybe for some of that, and then separate the green line item and negotiate that separately.
I can ask. I don't know where we're at. He did say ask if we need more funds, to ask sooner rather than later. It's been a few months, and obviously there's a lot going on at the national level right now. So I can certainly request those additional funds, but if we make this motion, just know that it could end up that the city is responsible for that 23,468 number. And that would be without the context statement.
If I could have made that motion, I would have. So
I'll second it.
your motion.
Madam Chair, if I may. Actually, the base less than what the department had budgeted as part of the 2025 operating revenues for the Department of Planning and Parks. So yeah, actually the proposal came back less than what I was expecting. And so we're in pretty good shape.
Okay, good. So it makes sense. I'm always happy to make sense.
Any other comments or questions? We have a motion on the floor that has been seconded. Do we need to restate it? Motion wise?
Well,
I know what we're voting on.
I believe the motion is to authorize the department to, well, actually, isn't it to recommend to city council that we move forward with a scope that includes those orange highlighted items, which equals a potential city cost of $23,468.
Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. Anyone opposed or abstaining? Motion has passed.
Thank you.
Hey, wonderful.
Just another suggestion on that very same subject. I would really clarify that the one trip in with the one of them or two of them is included in the bid. Because I think when you start reading the bids and everybody says, well, what about local companies or whatever, the travel and the person in for those days, I just make sure the wording's a little clearer that what you're looking for is that addition of one
One
specialist.
person for those 2 days. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, then we'll move on to the National Underground Railroad Network. That Robin too?
I don't have a slide for that, so I'm going to stop sharing. Madam Chair, members of this commission, as you may recall, the National Park Service awarded this commission or the city 2 grants pertaining to its National Underground Railroad Network to Freedom program. They are 2 separate grants. One is researching United States Colored Troops Freedom Seekers. And those are men who enlisted without their owner's consent. Our consultant from the Wildwood Historical Society, Ellen Reichert, is working on that story and that research. And that research would lead to an application of nomination to this Network to Freedom. Our other story involves 16 escapees over the Missouri River. Doris Keevan Frankie, a well-known area historian, is working on that story for us. A significant figure involved is Archer Alexander, who is of national significance, but she's been instructed to tell that broader story of all 16 men and their reasons for escaping that evening. So she's been selected for that project. The reason we are touching base with you this evening is we had a little bit of a snafu. We started scheduling our kickoff meetings with each of these consultants. And amidst that, the National Park Service informed us that, there was a federal funding freeze. And so they advised us that they had no funds to provide. So that lasted about a week. And then we got a new message that said the funds were released again and they didn't anticipate any further disruption. Given what is going on at the federal level, the department felt it prudent that we sit down with our National Park Service representative and have a follow-up conversation, which we did. He assured us that they did not anticipate that the Network to Freedom program would get cut, and he felt that these funds were safe. But we as a department do want to advise you that there is certainly a fair amount of uncertainty at the federal level right now. However, we are seeking endorsement from this commission this evening to proceed anyway. And the reason we feel that we should is one, again, our National Park Service representative felt fairly confident that this program would stick around, given that it is a history program. And 2, our 2 consultants are highly qualified and have been working with us for quite a while. 3, our city council has endorsed our African American History Trail project, which will not go forward if we don't do this underlying research. And 5, the funds involved in this, whether it comes from the city or whether it comes from federal level, and hopefully that will stay committed, it's going to local organizations that are important to our historic preservation efforts here in Wildwood, including the Wildwood Historical Society. So we hope that you agree with us that it's worth moving forward in this uncertain climate and taking advantage of these grant funds that were awarded to us by the National Park Service. So I would respectfully request a motion such.
A question first, how much are the grants? I've read this and I can't find any dollar amounts anywhere. Is there
It's a total of $10,000
between the 2?
between the 2.
And so we may get 5, we might not get 10. Is that kind of?
I think we'll get all 10. At least that's, it was already committed. It was
That's fine.
already awarded.
I just had no idea how much. Thank you.
Yep.
So move.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second? Debbie seconds. Any other questions or comments?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
just for the commission members' understanding, with grants, we actually budget the entire amount. And then we are reimbursed. So in the department's operating budget, we have the $10,000 set aside, knowing that we would be reimbursed. That's why I'm kind of confident that even if we weren't to get all of the grant monies, that we do have the money set aside in that anticipation.
Okay, thank you. Okay, all those in favor of this motion, please raise your hand. Thank you. Anyone opposed or abstaining? It has passed.
Thank
You may
you.
proceed. Yes, sir.
Pertner Park.
I was waiting for you to say it, so I didn't have to.
That's the first time I got a smile on Dr. Rambo's face. I must have said it correctly. Thank you, sir. Madam Chair and members of the commission, the department just wanted to provide a brief update on the Pertner Park process that's underway. It's important to this commission because the majority of the volunteers on that ad hoc group are from the Historic Preservation Commission, and we appreciate that very much. At the last meeting of the Pertner Park ad hoc group, the consultant, TerraSpec, provided the first draft of the master plan. I would say for the most part, the members of the ad hoc group were very pleased with the outcome of that first draft. There were additional comments that were provided, and that second draft will be presented to the ad hoc group this coming Tuesday, March 4th. Along with the second draft of the master plan, there have been developed two cost estimates. And both of the cost estimates are more than what has been budgeted for 2027, I believe. And what was budgeted was approximately $1 million. There are a couple of things on the plan that were not anticipated when the department at least scoped the project with the consultant. Those are a new bank building to replace the one that is structurally unsound, and a permanent restroom facility. In those two instances, if those are removed, we are very close to the budgeted amount and could probably proceed with all of the other improvements. But that's a decision for the ad hoc group, not the Department of Planning and Parks. The last item I just want to identify for all of the commission members is that a structural engineer did do an assessment of the structures, and other than the chicken coop, all of them were found to be unstable, unsound, or in very poor condition. It looks like our hopes of maybe salvaging the buildings, structures, and using them as part of the park components probably isn't going to come to fruition. But at our meeting back in February, the ad hoc group did note we should salvage what we can and certainly incorporate it into anything we might build on that particular park site or any of our other park sites across the community. If there are any questions, certainly I'll be glad to try to answer them along with Ms. Key.
Rob, you were confused.
No,
Of course you should.
what are they, did not include all class placebos that 10.
The second estimate, I provided you the low estimate as part of the memorandum that's before you tonight. The other is about $150,000 more. It includes a improved retaining wall system for the parking lot area. And it also includes, I believe, the trail from Hinken Road through the site to the parking lot area with a paved surface. And so obviously we have a lot of discussion to do on Tuesday night. I actually think we can get to the budgeted amount. And again, as part of the 5-year capital improvement plan, we have set aside money for 2027. I gave you the good news. I saved the bad news for the ad hoc. It will, but I have a confidence here that, again, we have a lot of our park facilities in the more rural areas, particularly down in the Glencoe area and then west of Route 109, where we just do portable restrooms behind a screen, and they seem to work well. There's an expense to maintain them, but obviously there's a real expense when we talk about a permanent facility with a septic system and then ongoing maintenance of the septic system itself. So I think there's some solutions, and I'm going to count on the ad hoc group led by our Dr. Rambo is the chair, and Ms. Stephen and Mr. Scott, others, that find a solution. And I think if you haven't visited the site, please do, feel free to. I think we all left the January site visit meeting feeling like, wow, what a great asset it'll be in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. And also, it's going to be the type of park that we don't have in Wildwood at this time. And I think that will be a real plus. So thank you so much.
It might be a little muddy there right now.
Everywhere. Okay, the open house debriefing, Robin?
Madam Chair, members of this commission, it feels like so long ago. But at the end of January, we did have a very nice cozy event here in City Council chambers. It looked very different than normal. We believe we had about 30 people show up in all, kind of went in and out as the evening went on. And we had a lot of good conversations and wonderful presentations from a variety of entities and people. We gave the community a presentation on Wildwood's Historic Preservation Commission initiatives and programs. Dr. Michael Allen gave a presentation on the final survey report from our survey effort. We had an excellent presentation from our youth commissioners about youth engagement efforts. Ms. Gwen Hinman from St. Louis County, I think, gave us a very informative presentation, so much so that I felt inspired to add a new tab into my new member binders for the St. Louis County Landmark program, because I don't think we've paid too much attention to that, and maybe we should. I did sell a history book and a Route 66 t-shirt, so that was good. And actually one of the individuals we reached out to with the survey did not attend the open house, but he called me up afterwards and said, hey, I'm potentially interested in listing this property on the Wildwood Historic Register. So I'm waiting to find out what information he has, but it sounds like a very interesting property in St. Albans. So lots of great things happened. I want to thank all of you for showing up as usual and really, just showing how much engagement there truly is at the commission and how we all love what we do and what we're promoting. I just appreciate that so much. There were excellent presentations all evening. We had wonderful assistance from city staff. I really thank goodness for our city staff. Whenever we say, hey, we need to set up a room, we want it to look like this, everybody comes down and makes it happen, and it goes like clockwork. So, and then when your staff liaison comes down with the flu afterwards, they all, came down and made it go poof so that I didn't even have anything to do on Monday when I came back. So, staff. But at this time, I'd like to open it up for your observations and comments because we're pretty much all here. So.
Anyone want to speak to that?
Well, you mentioned that someone is interested in listing their property on the thing. feel free to give them my contact. I'll be glad to talk to them and work with them. And since apparently mine worked out all right, that if I can be of any assistance to them, feel free to give them my contact.
Thank you. It will be a good reason to follow up with them.
I thought it was a good mixer and I like the county parks gal that came in and, you know, gave her a little presentation as well. And of course, our Wildwood Historic gal did her good deed too.
Oh, yeah, sorry, you were on my other page, so.
That's
I didn't
okay.
get-
No. Matter of fact, Gwen from St. Louis County, she's gonna be one of our guest speakers this year
Oh,
at the
nice.
Historical Society.
Yeah, she did a
So,
good job.
yeah, so hopefully some of what she presented, she'll be able to go more in depth. So make sure you come to that meeting.
Right.
I don't remember what month it's scheduled for, frankly. But it's probably in the your newsletter.
I just also wanted to extend a special thanks to you and to the members of the Wildwood Historical Society for showing up and being a part of it as well. I thought that was really special and it was a great opportunity to connect in that way.
And of course, the hot chocolate was a hit as well.
Yes.
And cookies. Oh, we can't forget the cookies.
From St. Louis County it's also helping me trying to track the ownership of our house back before the 30s. So she has been in contact with. Very nice lady.
Great.
Well, anything we should do differently for next time?
Ed.
I had to skip out and go to a homeowners meeting, but I went back and listened to the whole video, and I know it's extremely difficult, but you could hear none of the conversation. If they weren't at the podium, there's nothing sound wise on anything. So maybe, as we always try, is to get a hand mic or try to get people to, because I'm sure it's a great conversation, but there's nothing on the recording. Oh, I'm sure some other people look at it too. So the presentations were fantastic, and I thought there was really good interaction when I was in here. But when I left, then I'll go back and watch the recording. Visually, it was fine. There was no sound for those folks that were sitting at the tables, and it sounded like it was really interesting because everybody else was making comments, but you couldn't hear actually what they said originally. So, and I know it's a struggle because we've always had that, but otherwise, I thought it was great.
You did have the hand mic, didn't you?
Yeah,
Mhm.
I'll accept responsibility for that. I was given the task to get the hand mic around, and I thought I had gotten to most of the people, but I was told that I didn't get to everybody because the comments were more spontaneous from the group. By the time I get over there, we'd be finished. And so, like I say, we're going to have to, the reason we did it in here was because we can tape it. And we weren't sure about the size of the group that might show up. The community room would be the preferred location if we do it in the future. And then there's the thought, if we do an open house, maybe we do it in spring or fall and we could be out at the pavilion in Community Park or something like that. So we'll figure it out, but I extend my apologies. I just wasn't fast enough on my feet.
It's just a comment. I thought it was, I really didn't mean it to be that negative. I just think that those are great. And if people go back and look at them time and time again, I know everybody worked really hard at it, but.
Well, my wife watched it and she said the same thing to me as soon as I walked in the door. I couldn't hear half of it.
What a lucky guy you are.
Well, maybe I can go back and do some video editing to make it more engaging.
Any other comments on that? We can move on. Okay, the Route 66 revitalization.
Start my presentation over from the beginning, but it didn't. All right, Madam Chair, members of this commission, We told you we would have Route 66 on every agenda, and sure enough, here you are, Route 66. And I don't think it's going to disappear anytime soon because as you know, we have a lot to plan for next year. And now that we're getting serious about our park project, we're going to have a lot on that front as well. What we have done since our last meeting and this one is the department has reached out to SWT Design and we've asked them, you know, are you interested in helping us bring this to completion? And we explained kind of where we were at in that we had this big, beautiful plan where we dreamed big. And now we have to rein it in a little bit so we can get moving for the 100th anniversary. We gave them our two ideas, which was one to rework the park a little bit, to maybe even envision it in a different way, such as a sculpture park, or our second or first idea, I don't know, but the other idea was to take from our current design and try to find a phase one within those components. So we explained this to SWT Design and they thought for a little while on it and provided us their comments. And basically what they said is we should, their feeling is that we should go forward and honor the engagement that happened around the park a couple of years ago and capture some of those key components. So to give it to you visually, I have on your screens their general idea. And again, this would be done with your input and with, you know, with everybody who's involved. But generally what they're recommending is that this yellow piece is what we concentrate on. They believe that would allow us to tackle the winning design from the student design competition, which, you know, would make our students happy for all that effort that they put into it. We can get a historic marker or sign or interpretive feature in there as well. There would be places to sit. There would be shade, hopefully. And then we also talked about bicycle parking. And the idea was to make this section a standalone section so that even if we go into the future and maybe we don't have the appetite to add any additional phases to the park, even if that were to happen, we would have a standalone park that looks really attractive, that's usable, that has some features to it that can really make it a standout piece along our Route 66 and hopefully drive some economic development through there as well. So that's their general suggestion as a way to go. So I just wanted to put that out for you, see what you're thinking at this stage, and just know that we've invited them. We've answered some of their questions and now they're interested in submitting a full proposal to the department. So we're not asking you to make a decision tonight. We're just kind of telling you where we're at in those conversations. And we're also very interested to hear what you think. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I could just
Yes.
add one item. Large portion of that shaded area is actually the Manchester Road streetscape, which is completed. So when you look at the street lights, the street trees, the grates, that's already in place, so to speak. So that's not a charge that would ultimately have to be addressed. And we also talked with SWT Design about the fact that in past instances, our Department of Public Works does concrete slab replacement, sidewalk replacement, asphalt resurfacing as part of the maintenance program each year. And oftentimes when we get near the end, given they get better pricing than most, the thought was is maybe we could tag on to them to get the concrete or flat work done and save some money there as well. So we're looking at all options, but obviously 2026 is pretty special and we'd like to have at least some presence at the park. Thank you.
And they also felt like this is what could be accomplished given the budget numbers we were throwing at them. So this is based on reality.
Comments or questions on this?
Good.
Yes, Rob.
This is 2,000. And I don't vision. However, I thought the slanted route 66 was the weakest element. Back then, man, at this point is those are most of the trees dying or dead. So we would have to replace those with trees that would be appealing in, immediately in the time frame this summer, so that they would next. We have any idea what it might cost to put a couple benches there? Because that's really all we're talking about. We don't have any space for some landscaping benches, and that would be inexpensive. Did we have any? You guys thought it? I'm throwing a lot at it. It's not fair, but have you thought of the designs like a road sign alternative that might be more workable, or I don't feel like we have anything now, but it's going to take 5,000 square feet and try to make it look nice. That's really what I'm hearing. I'm not going to be negative. You guys have had these just sort of open it.
So the intention this evening is to share like kind of this is based on a, 30-minute, 45-minute Zoom conversation with staff. This is not based on a full proposal, and it's not based on, the type of public input you would expect throughout the design process to produce the end product. So everything you're talking about is something I would expect as part of that process. As we move towards, a final phase 1 concept.
If you're walking, that's pretty.
I think the idea is there's actually quite a bit of street parking around there. It's not exactly at the park location, but it's in the general vicinity.
Yes, there's some on-street parking spaces on the opposite side of Manchester Road and both east and west of this particular location. We would discourage parking on the residential street, obviously. The thought was make it more a pedestrian facility at the start. Again, as Robin's mentioned, this is very, very, very preliminary, and just want to let you know we're thinking about it because there is money set aside in the 5-year capital improvements plan. We don't want to all of a sudden bring it to you and say we're ready to go. We want you to see it from its inception.
Is there a crosswalk nearby, parking that's across the road? Because it's a pretty busy road.
There may, I don't know, so I'm not going to answer, but while we talk about the other items, I'll look on Google Maps and see what we got.
Well, I don't want to hold up meetings, and I wouldn't be unfair, and I also, nobody supports Manchester Street State concept more than I do. I love the idea of this park, but it's quite expensive, and I'm not sure this is really fall down the field, but I understand it. Do something that's 66 specific for the big anniversary. But I guess it's not ready for prime time, so
Well, there's still very good comments, and I can pass them along to SWT Design as they formulate their proposal.
Yeah. So approach these days. I didn't mean to rain on anybody's parade, but it was worth asking. Okay.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
There is a crosswalk to the west, just past the access point into Rover Crossing. So it's part of the commercial center that's located there. And I think Ms. Keefe and I understand the competition for dollars we're facing of late. And this is also one of those areas where if we want to prioritize Essen Log Cabin, funding may come from there.
Okay.
Anyone else? Okay,
All right, I'm going to move on to the second component of this memorandum, which is planning for the 100th anniversary. And one thing the department noted is regardless of, how or when or if we move forward on the park project, we have been discussing that there has to be some sort of memorial to Route 66 along Wildwood's historic Route 66 corridor, even if it's one of our Wildwood historic markers. And so just for the purpose of moving that needle along, we took a first stab at some draft language for you to look over and provide your feedback this evening of what might be included on such a marker. So I have that up on the screen for you, and it's in your agenda packet. If you have any comments at this time, I'm happy to hear them. Otherwise, I don't anticipate you approving this language this evening. We just thought we would move forward on it. And you're certainly welcome to me with your suggestions and comments as well if you haven't had a chance to look at it yet. We don't need to do that at this meeting. Thank you.
I had a quick question. What's the plan for you mentioned it here, the original section of the pavement that's over there in Grover? Because I think there's a big for sale sign there. Is that privately owned, or is Wildwood looking to take that over?
Well, it is private property. I don't know if Director Vunich, sometimes he's more involved in the development proposal, so maybe he has additional information.
Over the course of the last several years, Mr. Larson, there's been a number of development entities that have looked at the wedge property, as we call it, which includes the original pavement area of Route 66. And we start every conversation with, you have to save it. And that's probably why in at some level, there isn't a project on the property. But to lose that section when we have required public space dedications as part of any rezoning or development proposal, it would not be a success. So we recognize it, we identify it, and as I say, some have taken it better than others, but we'll keep at it.
I may have wandered over that area once or twice, but I think it's fascinating. I think, yeah, definitely you would want to keep it.
yes, Joe.
Madam Chair, just one more thing about the text. I think Robin did a very good job of kind of coalescing what is really something very, very important in a few words like we have to do. The only other thing I would mention, when we did the other 11 historic community markers, we always try to have as much feedback from all of the commission members. Tonight that since we have so many absent, I would just encourage you to take a look at it. We'd like to keep it on the agenda and keep kind of whittling away and getting the proper text so we could move forward. Thank you.
Could I clarify? We are going to remain with the original design for these other markers. Is that correct?
Yes, at least that's what we've heard over and over again from this commission.
Oh,
I'm sorry. It can be at the park. I think that would be part of a larger conversation and depends on whether we move forward with the park project.
Steve?
okay. I have a editing comment on the text here. In 1933, its Route 66 designation, I would say, was relocated from Manchester Road to Watson Road.
I like that.
Rather than
Then
the
change.
designation was changed, it actually moved. 66 moved to Watson Road.
Good edit. Thank you.
Else looks good.
Ed?
Actually, that's a good point. I happen to be down on Watson Road twice this week, and they're using signs that have historic 66 on with Watson Road. Have we looked at any possibilities for signage that way? It's already marked that way?
Yep, we have our own set of signs for the byway.
Okay.
Okay. I also notice going on various websites like Google Earth, it identifies our section of 66 as historical Route 66. So it's getting some recognition. But I like, until I moved out here, I didn't realize this was, I thought 66 was down there in the valley, not up here on top of the hill.
Okay, move along to the work project update.
Well, Madam Chair, members of this commission, we've been discussing quite a bit that's already on here. But one thing I did want to touch upon is that last night, we held the second meeting of Wildwood's Master Plan Update Committee. It was a great meeting and we talked extensively about gathering public input citywide into this very important plan effort that we're embarking on. If you aren't familiar with the City of Wildwood's master plan, it essentially sets the vision for our city on what we want to see for our environment, for our land use, for economic development. It looks at it in this comprehensive way, and it's part of how we've done such a good job preserving certain aspects of what made Wildwood special. And what brought people together for that incorporation effort in 1995. So we heard a lot of good things last night. We had a lightning round, and I did want to let you know that during that lightning round, people were asked to identify what they still wanted to preserve today in Wildwood after watching the incorporation video. And we did hear historic preservation. It got up on the poster, so I thought you would all be appreciative of that. But again, we need to hear from everyone in our city. This public input piece is just so important because it's going to set the stage for everything else. And so I'm going to ask your help. We have these little cards with QR codes that we passed out to our committee members. I gave each of you a handful of them. Please take them to your neighborhoods, take them to your organizations. We're looking for Wildwood resident feedback, but please pass those around. We want to make sure that we reach as many people as possible. We'll be reaching out through the newsletter. We'll be reaching out through, I assume it's in the Gazette. Okay, through the Gazette, through all of our typical social media channels. But honestly, I think word of mouth and some peer pressure goes a long way. So please encourage that people take that survey. It goes live on March 1st. So please don't hand out those cards until March 1st or later. I don't want anyone going to the page, seeing it's invalid and giving up on it, okay? So March 1st, this Saturday. Any questions about that? And thank you for your help. All right. Secondly, I did want to touch on our additional research pertaining to our historic marker honoring our local men who served in the United States Colored Troops. As you may be aware, before we were awarded the National Park Service grant, we had hired Ms. Riker to do extensive research on each of those local men that we had identified as serving. She also did extensive research on Antioch Baptist Church, Mount Pleasant Church, and the whole story connecting those two places. She did research on the Coleman-Tyler migration. And she just did a wonderful amount of work. The packet is yay high and just full of good information, and she organized it beautifully. She found a lot of primary sources for us to, use for, when we're displaying this information, however we might use it. So we're just really thrilled, at least from the department's perspective. We think her work was just fantastic and well worth the cost. We do believe that you would all benefit from reading this research. So the department just received it the other day, and we're working on packaging it together in a readable format, whether it's bound booklets or something of that nature. And then we'll distribute it to you all so that you have an opportunity to dive into it, because it's really good information, and I'm excited that we have it now. Any comments on that? All right. Our youth members are not present this evening, but they are excited to present their projects to you in March. So as you may recall, they are doing second year projects. They've been meeting with Chair Stevens and myself to brainstorm, and we're excited for what they have to present next month. And that's everything I wanted to highlight on the work program. But of course, there are many items on here, and if you would like to talk about any one of them, Director Vunich and I are available to have that conversation with you.
Where do we stand on placing the marker on the colored troops? Are we going to be able to do it at Babbler, or do we have to start working on another site?
I think that it's probably likely at this point that we might have to start looking at new locations. We haven't heard a response back from the park superintendent, and quite a few times we've reached out. I don't know, Director Vunich, did you have another contact?
Well, I've not had another contact, but there is something finally moving forward with the extension of the Western Greenway Trail through Babbler State Park. And as you know, the location we chose for that particular marker is where that trail is intended to come through the park, or a portion of that park. Ms. Ripito, our Assistant Director, Mr. Newberry, our Senior Planner, and Ms. Keefe are going to be working with Great Rivers Greenway on that project. And so we proverbially slipped the Mickey in there with Ms. Keefe, because she's going to get that marker as part of that trail. And so I don't know when that's going to happen. So the good news is it is just a marker. It's not like we're building a building. So if we do want to get something out into the community in that particular area, we probably may want to start thinking about, is there a temporary location while we work through what we want ultimately to be the permanent home for that marker. But there's a lot of good news. That trail through Babbler State Park would connect to the Levy Trail, which connects to the Katy Trail. And then, quite frankly, we're only a few properties removed from making the connection to Rockwood Reservation, which then makes the connection to the Merrimack River. So great stuff.
Good, thank you. Steve?
Yes. SHPO is in the same department as the Parks Department. Could they help us push the state park director to move in this regard? I just wonder that they should have an interest in, SHPO should have an interest in getting this recognized.
Well, I'm pretty sure a representative from SHPO was involved in our initial meetings and conversations. It couldn't hurt. I can always reach out,
Yeah.
but I have a feeling this is in a whole nother level. We'll see.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything more on that? Then it looks like we're moving to a proposed zoning and demolition request, and Joe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of the commission, the next three items Ms. Keefe and I have to present aren't necessarily very positive, but we'll do our best to give the information to you and let you know what's happening with these historic assets. The task I have tonight is to explain to you that the Mary Cliff residence has kind of reached the end of the road, at least from the city's perspective. As you know, in April 2024, the Historic Preservation Commission received an application for demolition of the Mary Cliff residence. In many regards, I believe the most important historic asset we have in the city of Wildwood. The Providence that owns Marinus Retreat and the Mary Cliff residence was kind enough to delay the demolition as we tried to find solutions or options for them to consider to preserve and potentially reuse. We spent much of the summer, fall, and early winter trying to find those solutions. We gave them a list of options that had been endorsed by this commission. And ultimately, the Providence came back with two options of their own. The only two options I believe they would accept. The first was they would give us the residence if we would relocate it to another property. From, I believe, a short conversation with Mr. Scott, that was very, very much a long shot given the mass, the size, the weight of that structure. I'm sure it could be done, but I don't know how it could be done on our rural roads, particularly Route 109. The other was they offered the property for sale, all 115 acres, and then we would own Mary Cliff. Obviously, that's not an option for the city of Wildwood. We have a strategic plan, and that strategic plan for the most part says enhance our existing parks, but limit our development of new facilities. There was a couple of individuals, one of which I couldn't reach, the other I did, that have a long history of purchasing properties and protecting historic assets. One individual, particularly in the Centaur historic community and the Monarch historic community. I had a conversation with him, explained the circumstances, and said he would be interested. He just needed more details. The details were provided to him and he declined. Acknowledging all of that, at the beginning of this month, the department went to the Planning and Parks Committee of City Council just to explain to them, do you want to purchase 115 acres? Obviously, that answer was no. And ultimately, the decision was made that by the beginning of March, the City Council meeting on March 10th, I need to have a report. And if the report doesn't contain something other than the city purchasing the property or relocating the asset, they will authorize via resolution the issuance of the demolition permit as requested by the property owner of the province. The memorandum you have before you tonight was provided to St. Louis County, the historian, so at least they know what's going on. We do intend to contact John Gunther, who has been working other channels, to let him know the timeline, which is now just a week or so away. But I unfortunately don't have very good news. I do appreciate the patience of the commission as we tried to work through the options and the assistance in developing the options, but the two options that are available are just not practical for a city like Wildwood, and certainly tried to find somebody in the community that has the wherewithal, but it's just not a project they want to take on at this time. If there are any questions of the department, Ms. Keefe and I will be glad to answer them, but I wish I had better news.
Any comments or questions? I know we're all very disappointed. We had high hopes.
We did. As you know, and I do not slight the Providence, they've been patient. It's almost a year now, at least 10 months. But as you know, when we did the site visit, they already had the construction fencing up to secure the building, and they had already started interior demolition. I don't know if we really had much of a chance, but we certainly, I'd like to thank the commission, and Ms. Keefe and I and others did the best we could. But that's a little consolation to those that want to see the asset retained and become a vibrant part of their facility, as well as the Wildwood community in St. Louis County. So, but thank you. Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, we've been working on another project since 2022, when a demolition request was filed for the J.P. Connell home along St. Albans Road at Old Manchester and Highway 100. We've been working for quite some time and been in conversations with that ownership group as well on this beloved Wildwood asset. Recently, we have had a little bit of hope in that there has been some interest in the property, and to my knowledge, there is still continued interest. However, in cycling through the process that we must follow according to our city code and our historic preservation and restoration ordinance, we did have to make a recommendation on the demolition request, which this Historic Preservation Commission did at its December meeting. And then because this commission recommended denial, it then went to the city council level where really there was only one option, which was to authorize the Department of Planning to issue the permit. However, at the city council level, they did put a 60-day hold on that permit. So that still gives us a couple months of time to potentially have those interested parties talk, and maybe something will still happen with the J.P. Connell house. So that's where things stand today with that. The earliest release of the permit would be April 10th of this year. Do you have any questions for the department at this time?
Looks like there are none. Steve?
If I may, you said there was discussion with John Phillips about that property. Is there any update on that, or?
My understanding is they are still talking, but that's the only update the department has to share at this
Okay.
time.
Carl
I think
has his hand up behind
You
you.
might have. Earl may have something.
Carl Essen, John's in transit right now from LAX into St. Louis, and we like, if we can, Steve, we like to have a meeting with you to review things. I think Monday. Are you around?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what John told me with the other things going on, and we're bundling that with possible people donating maybe things for the Essen Log Cabin, like a fireplace or like a roof. And Joe said that we give credentials, but that's something, maybe I can help that latitude as well. It's the same arena with the schematic design that I showed Robin a few weeks ago.
Well, I told John that if there's anything I can do to help.
Yeah, I think what
Please,
John's expressed
let me know.
to me, and he has to jump back to Seattle because Weiwei is coming in from England doing an art show, and Weiwei was a famous artist.
Yeah.
And we're friends with him, and so John said he has to go out there for another week, so he's bouncing back and forth. But we met with the owner of the property and had a very good meeting.
Okay, so there is still a glimmer of hope
No, we're
in there someplace.
in that situation.
Okay,
I think John wished to get your advice on certain situations.
yeah, please, but
Maybe at your house or something like that, if possible.
be glad to let me know.
Well, that's what we're going to do.
Thank you, Carl. Anything else before we move on to the other one? Okay, the demolition request for the one on Route 109.
Madam Chair and members of this commission, on a cold but not so cold day, it was actually quite sunny and nice, really. We trudged through the snow from St. Paul Lutheran Church's parking lot. We cut across some yards, risked our lives on Highway 109. And we made it to 1021 Highway 109. A demolition request for this house was submitted to the department on January 20th of this year. It is a single-family dwelling that was built in 1941. And it's in one of those rare situations where the surveyor agrees with the St. Louis County assessor on that one. So we do think it is 1941. And because the home was over 75 years of age, this commission was part of this process to review that request. We had 3 commissioners show up to the site visit on February 21st. And that was Mr. Marshall, Mr. Rambo, and Ms. Quarterneck, along with Director Vunich, myself, and our wonderful police officer. We met with the owner, who is building a new residence on that same property. It's about 1 acre in size. I've included the plans for the new residence as well as the existing boundary survey in your packets this evening. And it was observed that this house was in exceptionally poor condition. I think everyone can agree with that assessment. But I do have some photos to share with you because we did not have quorum. So we are asking you to make a decision on this tonight. But this is the front of the home. One thing that was unique about it, according to our surveyor, is the horizontal paned windows. Apparently that was an uncommon feature among other properties surveyed in the same era. But other than that, I don't believe there was any special significance. So these are the exterior elevations of the home. This is the view into the backyard. So it's a pretty nice lot, very scenic. And now we get into the house and you can really see what we were saying. There was an exceptional amount of personal property still in the home. I was a little bit too chicken to enter into it, but of course, Mr. Rambo will always go into an old home of any kind, and he influenced Director Vunich, I'm sure. So they went in and took the pictures, but you can see it was quite a mess. It stunk to high heaven. It was very moldy. There were some bowed. You can see the bowing in the ceiling and the door frames. The door was actually scraping against the ceiling there. You can see the bowing even more pronounced in this photo. So there were some pretty significant structural issues with the house, and it is definitely at the end of its life. There were a couple other junk structures that were pretty, I would say, very poor condition on the property that will probably also go as part of this, and some beautiful trees. According to the owner, he is looking to preserve as many of those trees as possible. In fact, he wants to plant some more trees to buffer some of the noise from Highway 109. And I do believe the new home would sit a little further back on the lot as well. This home is just 30 feet from the front property line, so not very far, considering that Highway 109 is a state road and pretty busy arterial. So tonight, as noted, we only had 3 commissioners at our site visit. So the applicant is respectfully requesting authorization from you this evening to demolish this home and build a new one. Well, this isn't part of the motion, but build a new one in its place. So I think I've noted that the department's recommendation is to authorize this demolition. We believe that this home is in very poor condition and structurally unsafe. And while it is a part of Wildwood's history, we've now documented it in our photos, and we will keep that on record forever after. Thank you.
Is this the picture of what he proposes to build there?
Yes, I believe that is the new one.
That's good size.
I move we grant his request.
It's been moved and seconded to grant the request for demolition. Are there any more comments or questions?
No grand staircases or anything like that.
Kind of reminds me of another one we visited a few years ago, not
Right.
very far from our home. Okay, well then, have you raise your hand if you're in agreement with this motion? Thank you. Is anyone opposed or abstaining? They may demolish.
Thank you.
Okay, it's been a great meeting. Yes, Joe.
With the permission of the chair, I just wanted to advise you that today or late today or early tomorrow, we will issue a grading permit for a project that's on the 50-acre tract of land at the southwest corner of Route 109 and Route 100. Grading permit will allow for some clearing and grubbing. It's the tract of land that, for the most part, everybody recognizes because it's heavily wooded. And for the most part, kind of sets the tone as you head west on Route 100 or south on Route 109. Just wanted to advise you that's going to change dramatically here over the next year as development begins on 115 homes. I want to assure you that the City Council, the Planning and Zoning Commission, and us as Keith, Department of Public Works and others, spent 10 years trying to figure this one out. And we got to a point where it complies with our codes, but it's certainly going to be hard to watch the development process proceed there. So just to give you a heads up.
Is it behind the Phillips 66?
Yes.
And what are the size of those lots going to be?
They range anywhere from approximately 7,500 square feet on up to about 15,000 square feet. 15,000 square foot lots are along the western boundary where we leave town center and go into what is called suburban, neighborhood edge transition. And there, the lots will increase dramatically in size as well as the density be decreased. But yes.
Now, are they, is the entrance to that subdivision going to be on 100 or on 109?
Both.
Both.
Excuse me. Access will be from Route 109 at the existing roundabout at Main Street, and there'll be an access point on Manchester Road. In fact, that's where they'll access for construction purposes. So I think if you ask the council people and as well as anybody on the Department of Public Works and Department of Planning team, we did everything we could to minimize the impact, but it is consistent with our town center plan. And I'd like to tell people that eventually there'll be 115 new residents plus that will be shopping at our stores, attending our schools, participating in government, and enjoying all of what Wildwood has to offer.
I have a question. It is my understanding, well, first let me preface that. We are historic preservation, and we often just think about the trees and the things that have been here for a long period of time. One thing that's been here for a long period of time are local cemeteries. It has been my understanding that there is a cemetery on that property. I have never been on it to verify that, but should that be true, what would be done to maintain that, or to, in some manner?
Well, certainly as part of the plating process, we'll identify the cemetery. Nothing to date has shown a cemetery as part of that particular property. I actually think it may be on the property immediately to the west.
Yeah.
actually a mausoleum. And there are any actual graves there, the mausoleum, and it's still intact. You go in and folks used to come out of the city, they would get the bones of their ancestors out and like clean them off. Because the ladies lived in an ancient two-story home, kind of a catty corner from Hades. Yeah, the Mall Maison or whatever. And my dad would go visit them, and my brother and I would play in those woods. That's why I'm confident that I was the most oppositional member to this development, mostly because they lied about the and mostly the visibility of the high. But that mausoleum is something that we probably should flag it on that other property. It's there, although the body's there, then it's not. It's just a stone structure.
Yes, and certainly state statute requires any cemetery that's discovered to be registered with them. Practice, and if you want to go to Carriage Place Apartments in the Harborsville Lake Chesterfield, in the middle of all those apartments, there's a cemetery that was preserved by the city of Wildwood that came very close to being bulldozed over, but we caught it in time thanks to a gentleman named Mark Trout, our code enforcement officer. So we protect them through our zoning and subdivision processes. But as I say, I believe it's on the drawing.
Okay,
farm
that's
dry
good to
home.
know. Thank you.
Just again, wanted to let you know, because when you see it all start, it's going to be a surprise.
Yeah.
I will tell you, there's a lot of aspects to being a planner. I think Ms. Keefe will attest to this, and I certainly can, that are just not very nice. Some of it's code enforcement. Signing off on the site development plan for this was no fun.
One last green space, Wildwood going to be gone.
Hey, thank you very much. We appreciate your keeping us apprised of things. Yes, Scott. No, Steve.
I have a question, or it was several years ago, and I'm sorry, I don't have the address. Off of Manchester or in Grover on the north side of the street, we looked at, I believe it's a roofing company. He has a house there. Next to the house is a small little cabin. I believe he wanted to tear it down.
Yes.
We rejected that and asked him to maintain it. I've been driving by looking at that. The paint is peeling. I don't know, can you picture what?
Is this on Lindy Lane?
No, this is right on Manchester. It's a small little. out
Just
front,
east
like
of the porch.
a little one-room office.
yeah.
And the paint is peeling on it, and I'm just wondering, it looks like he's just letting it go. And I'm wondering, Wildwood does have, or is using the county property maintenance code.
Certainly.
And I would just wonder if there can be any enforcement on maintaining that little building. It's not that much to maintain, but it does need exterior paint.
Well, it's a complicated story, and I'll do my best to summarize it. The Department of Planning, Mr. Newberry, our senior planner, and I met with the two owners of the business, the owners of the property. They have a number of illegal activities underway on the property, which precludes the issuance of a permit. They would like to renovate the small building, but I basically told them until you correct the zoning violations, the department can't issue a permit. And so to date, they have not. I'm hesitant to issue summonses because obviously that creates some friction. But with the permission of the chair, we'll have something on the March agenda for you. See if we can break that impasse. I know the two owners have contacted the mayor and have kind of expressed frustration with the department. But bottom line is, you've got commercial zoning and you're using it for industrial purposes, and that just doesn't work. And until I'm told differently by city council, you need to clean up your property, and then we can talk about the renovations to the two buildings, the small house and the bungalow. But we haven't reached that.
Okay, no, that's
juncture.
great. It's not being ignored.
No, not at all. I can
Okay,
tell you
great.
that. Thank you.
Well, Steve, we thank you because you seem to spend a lot of time going around looking things over and bringing things to our attention. And I'm very serious about that. We appreciate it.
Well, I'm nosy. I like to poke around and I like all these little interesting things. This is interesting city. I enjoy living here.
Well, thank you. We're glad you're here. Anything else? Well, I don't have any wonderful closing thoughts tonight. I've been a little detained on a few other things, but they're coming along better now. So I just thank you for being here, and we really appreciate all the interest and thought that each one of you give to all of our projects. It's grateful to hear all of it. So thank you so much. We are going to ask if there's any objection to closing the meeting for the evening. Hearing none, the meeting is adjourned by general consent. Have a great time. It's almost springtime.